Hi there, and welcome to our video about editing your semiotic analysis. When you're editing, it's useful to follow a process so that you avoid wasting time. For example, there's no point looking at typos and changing minor things in a paragraph if you decide that that paragraph is not actually useful for your overall argument. So what we recommend is that you actually follow this process, that you edit in 4 levels. So first of all, looking at the argument, then the structure, then the paragraphing, and finally the expression. So I'm going to take you through this particular process. So first of all, when you edit for argument, look at your answer to the question. Is your answer to the question captured in a thesis statement? Is that thesis statement in your introduction, and is a similar version of it in the conclusion? Does it completely answer the question? And are the key reasons for your answer very clear? And are they developed throughout the essay? Then, when you're happy with the argument, look at the structure. Think about the overall flow of the structure. Are the paragraphs developing your argument in a logical way? Is it a convincing structure? And look at your topic sentences. If your reader was just to skim read your essay and focus on the topic sentences, does it make sense? Does your argument develop a logical structure? Also look at the signposting. So if in your introduction you've given signposting as to what the structure of the essay will be, is that followed in the actual essay? When you're happy with the structure, then look at the paragraphing. Does every paragraph have one main idea? Does it have a topic sentence that clearly tells us what that main idea is and how it answers the essay question or the semiotic analysis question? Do your paragraphs have enough evidence? Are they roughly between 100 to 200 words long? And is the evidence that you've used correctly cited? Then look at expression. So look in particular for long sentences that could be shortened, and look at whether your writing shows exactly what you meant it to show. Is there any repetition that could be cut? And look at whether the sentences flow nicely together. One really good way to check for your expression is to read it out loud for yourself, to see whether the variety of sentences makes sense, whether it flows evenly, and whether the ideas make sense together. Finally, look at the typos and formatting and other minor things. So we're going to focus on expression now, since we've talked about the other elements in the other videos. When you're looking at expression, you need to look at clarity and cohesion. So clarity is about whether the ideas that you're putting on the page clearly represent what you intended them to. Now the problem is that many things can be misinterpreted. So if you look at this sentence, just to take a simple example, I saw the tree coming around the hill. That could mean that you were moving around the hill, and you would assume that your reader would understand that. But there is potential for misinterpretation. It could mean that the tree itself was actually walking around the hill. And that's somewhat confusing. In this case, it's kind of funny. But in an essay, you want to make sure that the sentences that you write avoid such misinterpretation. You can also think of another example, like the man was throwing the stick with the dog. It could mean that the man was throwing the stick to the dog, or it could mean that the man was throwing the stick which was attached to the dog, and he was throwing both of them at the same time. So these kinds of examples show you that misinterpretation can happen, and you want to make your reader understand exactly what you mean. So to avoid this misinterpretation, you need to check your writing for clarity. So ask yourself, is this exactly what I mean? Can it be misinterpreted? Have I used the right words? Have the sentences that I've put down connected in a way that convey exactly what I mean? One way that you can lose clarity is in really long sentences. So you see here a sentence that's many lines long, and it's talking about color, it's talking about femininity and the transfer of value, and it's talking about the details of the image that they're looking at about the girl and the Barbie doll. So this sentence becomes quite confusing when you read it through. And one thing that you want to check is that if you have too many ideas, you could, for instance, split up the sentence. If the wording itself is complicated, try and reduce the amount of adjectives or adverbs that you have in your academic writing, or change the wording. if it's too jargon focused. And if it's awkwardly phrased, so if the structure of the sentence is awkward, you could restructure it. So here I've revised this particular example. I've split it up into 4 sentences, and with some of the sentences, particularly the last one, I've changed the structure of it to convey the meaning more accurately. So think about revising your work for clarity. Another thing that can lead to confusion is with pronouns like it, this, that, and there. They can often refer to something that you mentioned above, but if it's not clear what you were referring to, your reader can get lost. So for instance, these are examples of unclear pronouns where you're not entirely sure what this or what the it in the second example mean. So you want to really specify exactly what you mean. So follow it by referring to the thing that you mean. So this advertisement, and it's the lack of colour in these 2 examples. Also, when you're writing, you want to create cohesion. So use cohesive devices when you're preparing your reader to jump between ideas. For instance, you might think of it as being a bridge between connected ideas, or a signpost to tell your reader what's coming up next, and to avoid abrupt stops or abrupt pauses between ideas. So think about showing the connection between ideas, in particular the order and the logic of the ideas, but also the contrasts between ideas, and to explain what exactly you're doing in that particular sentence. You can also use these kinds of cohesive devices to show where you're up to in the essay. And these can be really helpful for your reader to know which paragraph, for instance, is the conclusion. So when you're looking at expression, look at clarity and cohesion. When you're editing your essay and in the final stages, use the ANU Turnitin practice site to check your work for academic integrity. And on that site, we've got more videos and resources about how to check your text matches. So to wrap up, when you're editing, look at it in 4 different stages. First of all, the argument. Second, the structure. Third, look at your paragraphs. And finally, look at expression and the details. And that will help you to save time as you're editing. You can also come to see us for advice. So you can actually send in your work and somebody will read it and give you advice in an appointment or in written feedback if, for instance, you aren't able to use Zoom to have a conversational appointment. So you can book an appointment with the writing coaches. And if you ever have quick questions about studying or short questions, for instance, about referencing, you can go and see the peer writers. Okay, best of luck, everyone.